Thanks for tuning in to Mindful Voices, conversations about practical mindfulness for an evolving humanity, brought to you by Applied Mindfulness Training. In each episode, host Matthew Robertson, Vice President of Development at AMT and creator of the Igniting Presence course, sits down with a different guest for an open, honest, and curious conversation about how they have applied mindfulness in their work and in their everyday life. Today's guest, Michael Carroll, is the author of Awake at Work, founder of The Wisdom Seat, and previous host of the Mindful Voices podcast. He began practicing meditation in 1976, graduated from Buddhist seminary under the guidance of his root teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, and is an authorized teacher in the Kagyu Nyingma lineage of Vajrayana Buddhism. Now, here's your host, Matthew Robertson.
All right, so welcome everyone to the next episode of the Mindful Voices podcast. We're trying a different format nowadays. My name is Matt Robertson. I'm the newly minted Vice President of Development for Applied Mindfulness Training, and I'm here with your familiar host, Michael Carroll. So I'm actually the new incoming host of Mindful Voices, and Michael is transitioning out, so we thought this would be a really fun conversation to have, to get together and introduce myself and talk about what Mindful Voices has been and what we're noticing in the world nowadays with mindfulness and kind of the process of awakening for humanity. So let's see here. I'd like to just jump in. It feels like a good moment to take a look at what Mindful Voices has been up until this point. So I'd love to hear, Michael, just a little bit. Of course, we talk about mindfulness and applied mindfulness as how do we take these teachings of mindful living and integrate them into our life, into our work. And you've spoken with quite a few people about that. So would like to welcome you to this podcast, hear a little bit about what it has been previously. And before I do toss it over to you, would like to take this opportunity to practice just one brief moment of mindfulness and lead us off here with just one mindful breath. So let's do that now. All right. Thanks, Michael. Over to you.
Well, first off, welcome. Congratulations, Matt. You know, that your leadership with AMT to the next level. Boom. I'm really happy for you. So thank you for doing it. I really appreciate it. So you're throwing it over to me to sort of explain what the kind of history and the core. Well, I think the issue, the fundamental issue to the voices discussion is, for me at least, is when you practice mindfulness awareness or put a lot of effort into the meditation, there is quite reasonably an emphasis on doing the meditation, right? I mean, we put a lot of hours in, go on retreats and do all kinds of stuff, sitting still, doing nothing but sitting still. So I get that, and that obviously makes a lot of sense. However, I think there's a blind spot to that approach, which is the practice is more about the post-meditation than the actual meditation. I always liken it to playing a piano. It's one thing to play the piano, but what it's really about is the music. And playing the piano is like sitting still for extended periods of time, but the music is your everyday life. So Mindful Voices is really about men and women who have worked hard at, some of the folks, Trudy Sable goes all the way up to the northern Canada to help and try to build bridges with Indigenous people that are noble, right? And then we have actors and lawyers, and I don't need to explain it to you, I guess I explain it to your audience, but how does mindfulness awaken how they influence the world and contribute to the world? And that, to me, has always been the fascinating aspect of the practice, is how it transforms the way we live our lives. And there's a lot of men and women spending their time talking about the practice, which I do a lot, I teach. But I'm far more interested in how it unfolds in everyday life. And that's why we got the Mindful Voices together. And I'm glad you're going to be the the guy taking over, man. So good luck.
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, it's an honor and just fun to have conversations, with people, conversations really that matter and that make a difference in people's lives. And, I think the principles of mindfulness are so universally applicable, but there's so many ways that it shows up in everybody's life. Everybody's different. Everybody has a different experience of being a human being, and each person has wisdom and a gift to offer. And, what I find so valuable about sharing is, man, I mean, this is like the first noble truth. Life can be hard. Life is suffering. And a lot of times we learn our wisdom through that suffering. Like we have to experience life, right? But when we share our stories with each other, oftentimes we can learn those lessons from other people's experiences and therefore make those changes in our lives without necessarily having to go through the same suffering. So I'm curious, you've spoken with a number of really amazing guests, but just to hear a little bit more about, well, how you integrate mindfulness into your life. You've got a lot of experience in the business world. You're up to interesting projects now in the wisdom seat. I mean, what does your practice look like off the cushion? What are some of those principles that you bring into your everyday life?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've written about it. I do it, stuff, but no one's asked me that question in a long time. I don't even know what to say. But, I guess this is the one thing. Just off the top of my head, obviously.
Sure.
Part of when I started this path as a young man, I guess I was 20. Well, I started studying Buddhism when I was 19, but I started the path when I was 23, I guess, in any case. Nowadays, what's the difference from this guy's point of view? What's the difference between 1923? They're all the same to me. Anyway, back then, and to a great degree along the journey, I always assumed that the more accomplished I'd become at these spiritual disciplines, the more that I would change in a way that would make me feel like, dude, this is great. I'm a happy guy. But what I've discovered is that's not what happens. What happens is you become more of who you are. I'm like more Michael-y, which probably pisses off a lot of people than I was when I started. So it's kind of almost becoming more intimate with the quality of who you are personally, and being comfortable with it, So I guess that's what it is. I just feel more comfortable with who I am in situations. I'm often in very complicated situations, often very difficult circumstances in organizational settings, which I think make a lot of people uncomfortable, frankly. But I don't. I think I feel like I can walk in and work with them more, like how I'm talking with you right now. Just that kind of a little more fresh, I guess, is what I'm saying. And I think that helps me have a broken heart in some of these circumstances, and also I don't mind being tough in conflict either. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, absolutely, and I relate to a lot of that. I mean, especially the discomfort and conflict, I think, is a consequence of perhaps not feeling like okay with myself and whatever I think and feel. I think acceptance. I'm working with that in my life now. It's like, how do I release those ideas of how I should be and what I'm trying to accomplish, and actually just pay attention to what's alive in my heart right now? What are the impulses that bring me alive? And then
I think it has a lot to do with trusting ourselves. I don't think I really trusted myself. It was always a quality like things could go horribly wrong and I could author it, and I'm just as much an enemy as I am a friend, And I guess things could still go wrong, but I don't feel that as much anymore. But anyway, I interrupted you, Matt. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I mean, that's a great point to add, and I guess I would just add to that. What I've noticed is that oftentimes I when I am being myself, that's enough, and that's what's needed actually in those situations, not whatever idea it is of how I'm supposed to show up. So if I can relax, show up authentically, trust myself, that's actually good enough, and the secret ingredient to transforming whatever situation is in my life. I'm curious. I always find it so interesting. What brings people to kind of the path of personal growth or mindfulness? You mentioned starting this journey when you were 23. I would love to hear a little bit more about that moment in your life. What led to you being able to talk about it in that way? That you started, this work at 23. What was that about? What brought you to it?
Well, I guess the principle, and then I'll speak for myself. I think the principle of what that young man, the Buddha, discovered, was, everybody has a pebble in their shoe. Everybody. No matter how, and my parents were very kind to me. I mean, they were the most loving, protective, anyway, they just were really raised me well. And I was very privileged in the sense I got to play in the woods a lot and, I was safe and, but as I got older, well, the reason why I'm saying that is even then, I realized there's a pebble in my shoe. Things aren't going right somehow, and I think I figured that out at 12, but, a lot of young people figure it out a lot earlier when they lose their mom to cancer, if they live in a difficult part of a city or, they're orphaned, you know what I'm saying? It's life. Suddenly, when you're a kid, you have this optimism. It's like, oh, dude, this is cool. I can't wait. This is going to work out. And you start realizing this isn't working out. I mean, what the hell's going on here? Anyway, so I got that for me personally, the pebble in my shoe at around 12 years old. I took my shoe off and I started looking at this thing at about 12, actually. Wow. And I that's all I cared about from then on is why are there pebbles in all of our shoes? And, I went away to college, got a degree in theology and philosophy, moved to New York. Met Dujam Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche, and Khenpo Kato Rinpoche, Ursel Tenza, others. Very fortunate. I'm a very fortunate man. And I'm very well trained, not a very good student, but I started doing that and blah, blah, blah. Bob's your uncle after that. So.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I relate to that. It's, and speaking of that, I think you said it so well. It's like that this practice is a journey of how to become ourselves. Yeah. I often look back to my childhood and feel that sense of authenticity that I had, as a young person before I kind of entered the world and came up with all of my ideas and solidified my identity. And it feels like that's part of the process that happens as we enter the world, and we kind of, step off the cliff a little bit. We start to experiment, and the early 20s, I think, are notorious for that, right? Experiment. Yes. Does this jacket fit? Are these ideas that I think are real? Are they working out for me or not? And had an experience like what you mentioned at the age of about 15 of losing my own father. And that was really...
I didn't know about that, man.
Yeah. It was an intense experience where we were on a family vacation in Mexico, actually, and he had something happen with his heart or his brain. We're not quite sure, but we were in the water together, and he drowned and ended up passing away.
That is like serious territory, man.
It was serious, and it was just one of those, I'm also grew up so blessed in Mill Valley, Marin County, the Bay Area, only child. My parents are spiritual practitioners, so I grew up around that community.
Right.
I really had an amazing childhood. And then in the matter of about 20 minutes, that was the first thing in my life that was like a major wake-up call. That was my initiation, right? What greater initiation is there to life than experiencing death,
Yeah, that's like a pebble. That's not a pebble. That's like a boulder.
It was a boulder.
Falling on your head.
It was a boulder. Yeah.
Whoa.
And so, at that age, at 15, I really felt clearly it was like, okay, childhood is kind of over. What are these identities that I need to step up and be a man, and I need to show people that I'm okay. And, I think ever since that moment, it's been a long journey of course, healing from that, but discovering what is authentically me. And what were just ideas that I got from the outside world, and kind of sifting through that. And I think suffering, can bring us to that journey, but it doesn't necessarily have to. But that we're all in some way feeling that urge to reconnect with just that piece of being ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's and when you lose a parent, especially, I think it's more like part of ourselves die. It's like that was a major part of my own identity, right? That then was known.
Yeah.
So I experienced that at a young age, which it was his time, and yes, it was a difficult thing to go through. But I still maintain a relationship with him in my life. Like, he feels very present, and I mean, what an ultimate gift to give me is the final lesson to impart, in this lifetime, because it's been a gift that has kept giving, and I'm sure will continue to, throughout the rest of my life.
I think these kinds of powerful tragedies, of which I have not had many, but I've had a couple.
That's great.
My heart's broken in pretty deeply in certain situations. How I've discovered with them is I go, oh my God, a lot of people have gone through this.
Yeah.
Like, how many children have lost their parents suddenly?
Right.
Oh my God. You never think about, like, I would never, you would never have known that land.
Right.
And it's like a secret society. Do you know what I mean? Like, that becoming that frightened, or kind of almost like cosmically betrayed in a way. I mean, I'm not blaming the universe, but you get my points. Suddenly, for a young one, for a little one, 15 or whatever. Well, anyway, no.
Yeah,
sad.
it's and that's part of it, right? Is it's how we work with those moments, right? Because that's part of life too, alongside the blessing of living, is that you have this flip side of the coin, and it's is it suffering or is it learning? And I think that's a big part of the mindfulness journey for me is how do I deal with the lows and make them, consciously integrate them into part of my journey.
My teacher, Trumbull Rinpoche, I love the way he would understate things. Or he would, anyway, I just love them for many reasons. But one of the things he said, which I remember all the time, he says, he helped us understand the territory of being awake. That was one of the things he helped us with. Not that we were very familiar with that territory, but nonetheless, he said, the situation is never 100% hospitable. And that's, for me, was very helpful, because there's kind of an underlying assumption that if life were what it purported to be, it would be 100% hospitable. Things like what happened to you and what happened to all of us, everyone here on this, our audience, we would say they shouldn't have been that way. And back when I was a theist and, believed in God and everything, and I still am not throwing stones. I might still be a closet theist. I'm not sure. But nonetheless, you'd go, well, why did God let this happen? That kind of thing, but it's not, the situation's not 100% hospitable, but it's, my sense is, my experience of that is that in order for a human birth to come to its fullest measure, we must be vulnerable, and it must expose itself as Matt or Michael or Sarah or Kelly, or it has to, this intimacy has to be exposed. And when that vulnerability occurs, things are up for grabs. You can't have any guarantees. So that territory of being exposed to the magnificence of the situation must include the inhospitability of it. And, from a Buddhist point of view, that requires courage, requires bravery and gentleness, of course. But anyway.
Yeah, that's, I think that's after having dealt with that experience as a teenager, I feel like that's been the greatest lesson, is how can I be kind and compassionate to myself first and foremost, so that I can interact with the world in that way. And this is actually a great segue, because I would like to turn our attention a bit just to our current situation as humanity, our culture today. I'm curious, with the work that you're doing now, what makes, or even in your own life, being an awake human being in this moment, it's like, what is unique about this moment in time? What's up for humanity now?
Yeah, yeah. That's a big question, right?
It is.
See if let me see if I can do that in 20 seconds. You know what I'm
Perfect.
saying? Well, the way I frame it is what I call the spiritual paradox, right? On the one hand, we're wildly endowed, right? Even this conversation right now, we have this wonder. You're down in Costa Rica, I'm here in
Yep.
Pennsylvania. We're having a great conversation. Healthcare. I just went to see this doctor the other day. I have an eye condition. It was a young guy, probably younger than you. He was so well trained and really subtle about the problem with my eyes. And then I just got in my car and came home. I mean, it's like, what the? Anyway, we could go on and on. I mean, the number of universities around me right now, two of which are rated in the top 20 in the world.
Right.
I could throw a stone and hit them, and there's two of them here.
Right.
So anyway, we're wildly endowed, wildly endowed. On the other hand, a level of madness that is unfolding is quite remarkable. You know, uh, the one I bring our attention to, and I don't mean this to by any means sort of place a burden on anyone listening here, including yourself, but nonetheless, every day, I think it's 2.5 billion animals are killed every day,
Oh, wow.
and that includes fish. So they have boats that vacuum up fish and turn them into paste and put it into a can and ship it to feed kitty cats every day. It's a giant vacuum cleaner.
Wow.
And animals that are slaughtered, the cruelty. It's just madness. I mean, I'm just bringing that as one example. I mean, we could just open the newspaper and look at Ukraine. I mean, so on the one hand, we have this really beautifully, we're well endowed. Humanity has worked really hard to have our endowments, and many men and women today work very hard helping others.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we have this madness. So the issue is, what do we do? Well, from the Buddhist point of view, that situation is as much an invitation as it is a burden, if not more of an invitation. The Bodhisattva vow is to provide, to heal those wounds. So from my vantage point, it's kind of like, I got in line for a long time ago at the unemployment line, and they hired me as a bodhisattva. So you go out and you try to lend a hand. You know what I mean? In whatever way you can, and it's as simple as being kind to others, and as important as starting hospitals. In any way you can. So, I mean, there's more I could say there, but I'll throw you the ball.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I see kind of two things happening. I see people engaging in a new interest in this kind of territory of the inner landscape of the psyche. It's like, what are these feelings, thoughts, and emotions? Who am I as a personality? How do I learn the map, and so that I can navigate this territory of my being better? And that's through things like human design and mindfulness meditation and the gene keys and the Enneagram work and Vedic astrology and these systems that humanity has come up with to kind of decipher what this integrated experience is as living as a human being. And the second is a bit more intuitive, which is this kind of spiritual desire to connect with something greater than ourselves. And people have a lot of different ways of doing that. On one hand, I see people turning to nature for that. They can find that in nature.
Sure.
And also kind of a resurgence of a religious consciousness. I have lots of friends that are turning back to their Christian faith and, looking to these luminaries throughout our history, like Jesus and the Buddha, and how do you live an ethical life. So I'm actually quite I'm encouraged, in the midst of the eye of the hurricane. It's like there is this point of stillness where people are kind of saying, no more. I'm not interested in engaging, with that.
Mhm.
But what can I do?
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that
No,
I
I hear you, and I think you're right in the sense that cataloging the toxicity of the situation is actually pretty easy,
sure. Yeah.
and actually in the very act of cataloging it, often people tend to amplify it.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't do online stuff. I mean, on occasion I go and I look at Reddit or I listen to uh, radio,
Yeah.
talk call on
Yeah.
radio. Some of these, I'm like, oh my God, the level of anger and hatred
Yeah.
that has become sort of standard operating procedure.
Right.
Like it isn't exceptional. It's like the syntax and tone and grammar of just social interchange. I'm like, it's truly become quite standard. Nonetheless, anyway, but cataloging all the toxicity is I think quite easy.
Yeah.
It's not hard. What what we're overlooking is, and I think we're all quite aware of this, is the level of compassion and kindness and nobleness that unfolds every single day here on this planet. I mean, I meet, I'm sure you do, and people on this audience that do every day, good people, people who care about one another, people who, I mean, every time I meet healthcare professionals, I'm like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like hospice nurses,
Right.
I'm like, geez, if I still had hormones, I think I'd fall in love every day when I meet a hospice,
Yeah.
you know? So there's just so much nobleness in humanity, and it does get camouflaged. And it often camouflages itself uh, in a sense of wanting to not. We all make mistakes between camouflage. Well, we may think camouflage is a form of deception, and it's not. It's a way of protection. And I think often wholesomeness and nobleness camouflages itself nowadays more than ever because of the scale of the toxicity.
Yeah.
So I hear you. I think we should attend to it and celebrate it more.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious now to turn a bit towards the future,
Huh?
and hear a little bit about the work that you're doing with wisdom seats, and what's worthy of our time, and curious about your thoughts on yeah.
You have a little baby singing in the background if you can hear her. Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah,
it's coming through, but maybe
but
that's
yeah, you
part of
leave it in. Don't edit it out.
it. Okay.
She's crying and singing. Uh, well, yeah, the wisdom seat's easy to just say what it is. It's
Sure.
it's a way here in the United States. One's global, actually. I mean, I don't know how it happened. A lot of people have come in from New Zealand and Canada and Hawaii and Japan, so it's fun. I mean, it's not like a giant thing. I mean, there's a few thousand people that are interested, but it's really about providing a forum. We started with the mid-Atlantic part of the United States to host mostly Tibetan teachers and build opportunity for folks to have authentic relationships. There's students within our community, Kondo Rinpoche, Zigar Kanto Rinpoche, Trungpa Rinpoche, Trangu Rinpoche, you know, Punlap Rinpoche, go on and on. So we're very honored to have these men and women teachers come and visit with us. COVID kind of changed everything, so we did this online more. But it has grown into a community of practitioners. We do retreats together. I teach sometimes, and it just keeps, it's really community led. We just invite, what do you guys want to do? So we do stuff. But we do it, well, and we do it in a disciplined way. Many of us are trained in how to foster community, practice communities. But that's wisdom seed. But in terms of the future, I think that for me, where I'm focusing, I'm 72 now, and I've lived a good life, blah blah blah. So I don't have that much longer to live. So how am I spending my time? You know, where I'm spending my time, where I'm focusing my efforts, is around householder disciplines.
Hmm.
That there are certain pillars of a sane society. Uh, and we could go through them all. And I'm a strategist, so I'd be happy to help build a hospital system or whatever people want to do. That's fun for me. But I'm older now, and I'm not going to be doing big strategy. And I applied most of that in corporate settings, so whatever. So where my effort is now is around householder disciplines from an awakened point of view. And householder is kind of a fundamental pillar of a sane society. And obviously it includes family, right? A householder, but it can include a lot of others, people who don't have families or people who are single, right? People who live alone or people who live in communities. So how do you arrange your life? How do you arrange your life to not only promote your own personal sanity, but to help the world and also, and this is the fun part, or I don't know if the fun part, for me it's the fun part, is how do you engage the phenomenal world in such a way to be in conversation with it? We often think that the phenomenal world is inanimate, but from a tantric point of view and from a other shamanistic point of view, it's not inanimate at all. It's awake and it has its own language and it has its own intelligence and wisdom. And how do you arrange your world to be in conversation so it can teach you and guide you and you can contribute and you can fall in love? So that's a big part of a tantric household. And that's where I'm spending my time is working with students and myself. I have to clean my dishes too. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's where I spend my time.
Well, that's a great example, and if it's okay, I'd like to just dig a tiny bit deeper into that. You mentioned, kind of almost what can be considered mundane tasks like cleaning the dishes, but what does that householder work look like, and what would be some examples of how you bring this work into those everyday moments?
Yeah, well, I think well, it's a big topic. I mean, I love talking about this stuff,
Yeah,
experimenting with it. Well, the first, you have to, I think, in order to work with Buddhist householder principles, and I think this is true for all Buddhist traditions, but I'm a tantric practitioner and I have a certain culture that I've been in, so it may reflect some of those dynamics. But essentially, you have to understand some of the building blocks of building a household. And one of them is to uh, understand how to how would you say invite reality into your life. And so therefore you have to show that you respect it. You have to show, and that's part of the grammar of being falling in love with reality is first you have to show that you understand that the world is sacred, that 360 degrees in all directions is a sacred situation. And not sacred from the point of view of solemn,
right.
but profound, unspeakably profound. And in order to, so the first move is you have to show respect. So, like one of the major rules is do no harm. I mean, of course, we're going to harm things. I mow the lawn. But if there's a little toad going along, I don't want, look out, Mr. Toad. you don't, you don't harm your world. You care for your world. You show respect. You don't lie, not lying in the sense of, you just don't misrepresent your experience in ways that maximizes your advantage to the disadvantage of the world. You have an honest relationship with your world. So these basic rules, and one of the ways to show respect is to make sure you arrange the physicality of your household in a way that uplifts. And a lot of the men and women who work with me as students, some not a lot, some they go, I said, you got to clean your room. You can't live in a messy world
Yeah.
because that shows disrespect to yourself and your world. So elegance is really, really important. And not elegance from the point of view of being wealthy, but beauty. being able to understand how to live a beautiful life. So anyway, I could go on and on.
Yeah,
I'll
no,
throw you the ball, Matt. Here, I'll
that's
throw you the
great.
ball.
That's great. I love that, and I relate to that totally. I would say, yeah, in my at least in my own experience, and I would say that I have friends that would probably say the same. It's a matter of kind of redefining what we value in our lives. I mean,
Yeah,
as I grew up, it was a story of what was considered success. And the American culture is very materialistic. And it's like you make your bed or you don't make your bed. As long as you've got money, like then you're successful or
right.
whatever. Whatever it is. And so I think that there is wisdom, and people are starting to value more that living a simple, uplifted, respectful, householder and life in general, is
Yeah,
actually what success actually is. To be happy,
yeah,
to be
yeah.
relaxed and healthy, and so I noticed those big shifts happening, and I think that each culture has its expression of that, and so
Absolutely.
to kind of put
Yeah,
ourselves in service by not necessarily defining it, because this is where I trust humanity. It's like when you get enough people with good intentions together, like what needs to happen will happen. But to bring people
yeah. I'm not
together.
sure I'm there on that, but
Okay. Yeah. Oh, I said the right people. Not everybody if you bring it together, but if you've
yeah,
got people that are focused, right, on trying to achieve the same goals, there is a natural intelligence, I think, that is present, and if given the space to emerge, will naturally.
yeah. I agree with that.
And
Absolutely.
so, I think that there's one of the ways that I am approaching kind of serving this moment is how can we, bring people together in new ways around these higher principles, around an uplifted space,
Right.
and to kind of see what happens and experiment,
Yeah.
so we'll see about the ways that we can do that. But even coming together and practicing together. I mean, none of these ideas are new, but configuring them in new ways with new values, and
Uh-huh.
I think it can lead
But
to.
and say a little more about what you configuring them in new ways. I'm curious.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind? How would you
Yeah.
configure them in new ways?
Well, one of my favorite quotes is, and I'm not sure who it's by, but I've heard the expression a number of times, is that part of the work that we're doing nowadays is creating islands of coherence in a sea of chaos, right? And it has to
I
do
like
with,
it.
how are we creating the world that we want around ourselves, and that it's up to us. And so, the trend that I see happening is there's kind of a disillusionment with these traditional ways that we've been coming together, especially digitally. So things like
Yeah.
Facebook or TikTok. I mean, people are sick of it, right? It's like, forget it. I don't want to do that, but they still want to get together. And so, what are the
Sure.
options that are out there?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there's all these platforms that are emerging that allow people to come together around topics of interest, right? So
Yeah.
let's say that it is mindfulness and meditation. Let's get a group together and meditate once a week, and once a month let's dive into our favorite book and study
Yeah.
things and hear
Yeah.
what each other have to say, and let's spend our time there sharing articles and cool stuff that's related to our shared interests, rather than letting some other algorithm populate our feed with the doom and gloom.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
think technology is getting to a point where people are more empowered to create, their experience
Yeah.
of life.
Well,
And
it's interesting. I'm very lucky. I get to meet all these cool people all the time, like you. It's pretty cool.
yeah,
And I met a couple of people who are what I guess and some of your audience might know, our audience, I guess, excuse me, is they're called world builders. Have you ever heard of world builders?
I have, but I'd love to hear
It's
more.
a
Yeah.
whole thing. The Guggenheim Museum did some conferences on. Anyway, bottom line is it's a lot of the digital creation of these living environments that you put your goggles on and go in and live, and
Right.
and they have to meet certain realistic standards to make them real, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is in these discussions with these men and women, which I just have so much fun talking about, is the larger notion of affiliation, which is, I think, kind of at the heart of what you were talking about is, when I was young, the way I affiliated is my mom brought me up and put me in a church. I was like, okay, this is it.
Right.
Affiliate. Okay, I'm already affiliated, I went to high school. There you go. You're affiliated. In other words, you didn't you didn't have much choice.
Right.
And when you affiliated, you kind of got indoctrinated sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, the Catholic Church, when was it? Martyrs, like people who are going to try to make you not be a Catholic. Look out, kind of stuff
Right.
like that.
Right.
Luckily, my mom and dad were kind enough to have me affiliate with good things. However, back to your point, affiliation now has become profoundly fragmented.
Mm.
Like it, I said this at a lecture. I said, you could like if you were interested in squirrels with top hats, you could go and probably find a group of people who are affiliating around squirrels with top hats. Well,
Yeah,
sure enough, I looked it up, and there is a group.
there is. Yeah.
Squirrels with top hats. So this kind of fragmentation of affiliation is I think has a good side and bad side. A good side in that it's very creative.
Mhm.
People can sort of self-organize themselves around interesting topics and interesting wisdom and insights. On the other hand, it also, I think, is part of the formula of loneliness.
Right.
People don't know how to fit in. They don't know where to fit in. They don't know how to affiliate. And it can accelerate shame and disorientation for people. Like the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. I never was part of it, but it sure feels like it's healthy, even though bad things have happened. They're like everywhere.
Sure.
That, everyone's kind of accepted, and they're brought in on their terms, that kind of thing. So I don't know, I'm babbling here a little bit, but affiliation has fragmented for good and bad. Um, so how are you affiliating? What are you affiliating with, Matt?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'll answer that question here in 1 second, but I just want to bring up, the first thought that came to me. This may have been a Charles Eisenstein, or I forget exactly who may have coined the term, but this idea of technologies of reunion.
Well, say it again. Technologies of reunion.
Technologies of reunion.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool. What does it mean?
It's systems and technologies that allow us instead to anti-fragment, to come back together,
Yeah.
to unionize ourselves around whatever principle they may be, but that
Right.
provide the medium to do that, such as these platforms that I'm talking about and so on. And I think the idea of affiliation is a powerful one, because it's like, what options are out there to affiliate with, and are we giving people options to affiliate with good things and higher principles and those kinds of things. So I would say that's a great question. It's like I was born into a spiritual tradition called the Eureka School, which was
I remember that. You always bring this up. I remember when I was young, boy, that was like
yeah.
that was a very profound kind of thing I couldn't put my finger on. But anyway, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
It's a very cool tradition. It was founded by a man named Oscar Ichazo, who came up with the modern Enneagram work, but
Right.
also has an integral philosophy that describes a map of the human psyche from the lower levels of ego fixations, we call them, which is what's been popularized in the Enneagram movement, to the higher levels of our divine nature. So you can move through the map with different meditation trainings, and it includes movement and diet and philosophy and study, but also meditation practice with light and color and breathing. So it's very dynamic, and so I consider myself an Eurekan, I would say, primarily
cool.
in terms of a tradition.
Right.
But we're in a multi-spiritual world now, and so I've gotten a tremendous amount, for example, affiliating with Naropa University, having spent
Right.
6 years there finishing my studies, and as a staff member being a certified meditation instructor in Shambhala, and really receiving the fruits of this silent sitting meditation. And then, of course, I'm a mystic and philosopher, so I enjoy studying the occult and the Gnostics and the Kabbalists,
Right,
and the
right.
Sufis, and we're all, it's the different paths up the same mountain. So Yeah, I would say, my primary affiliation is someone who desires to serve the spiritual evolution of humanity,
Yeah,
in whatever way that I
that's
can.
cool, man.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
One of the things I'm doing out here now at my farm in Costa Rica is beginning to contemplate what are new ways that we can bring people together who are interested in studying themselves and the world around them, and what kinds
Right.
of experiences can create the space for these higher levels of consciousness to emerge and begin to influence humanity
Yeah.
in new ways. And so, Costa Rica is a very unique place, and so it comes with incredible possibilities for expansion, but also limitations. For example, everything molds here. So bringing books down, it's like they don't last. So what are ways that you engage with information? Can you engage digitally? And how do you keep the batteries dry? And it becomes, this relationship with Earth,
Yeah.
with this
Yeah.
environment around me. And it's been a tremendously rewarding experience to just sit and listen to what this place is, and
Right.
to begin to co-create in relationship to it, with my intention on the goal, to be present, and then see what comes, and so we'll see. We're playing around with the idea of a modern monastery, and giving people an opportunity for not just a 3 or 4 day retreat, but to come for a month and have time to work online, but be around other people and have access to facilities that encourage contemplation and practice. And the big thing about this place is looking at the wisdom of nature, is
Yeah.
the big thing, because it's you sit there for 20 minutes and you watch the clouds roll in. It's like you see the rain coming. It's like, oh, it's gonna rain in 20 minutes because you see it coming up and then it comes and then it goes.
Right.
So you get this experience, of the rhythm of nature,
Right.
that is, of course, quite powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
In my tradition, the headline for the conversations, drala. That
yeah,
there's this. But but I think the audience may be more familiar with kami, maybe in Japanese. They're pretty much the same thing. But each culture has this language
yeah,
on how to be in conversation with the phenomenal world.
right,
When the rain comes, we go, "Oh, it's raining." Well, no, that's a conversation.
right,
There's a give and take going on.
yeah,
It's saying something to us. Saying, we keep thinking are words, but it's an embodied saying.
right,
And when shamans and great masters of these dynamics, who are in good-hearted, they're not just magicians, but they're spiritual masters, help us understand that language,
yeah,
the phenomenal world becomes our teacher.
yeah, right,
That's where my closet theism comes in.
right, right.
So
Yeah,
you're down there. I've never been to Costa Rica, but the Caribbean, to me, the Drala down there or the Kami down there, it's a fierce situation.
yeah,
They have
it's wild.
fangs and sharp claws and also gentle, obviously. But
Sure.
where I come from up here in the Northeast, there's fierceness, but it's a much more sweet water. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's the jungle,
Yeah.
it's the wisdom is necessary in order to live down here,
Right.
and it's perhaps a spiritual theory in some ways, of course, but how I've noticed a lot of the cultural conversations throughout human history has been this kind of East versus West. There's this, is it Eastern philosophy, is it Western philosophy, and it's this kind of horizontal movement where we're looking outside of ourselves and exploring knowledge in all of these different domains. What I see down here arising now is a big interest in indigenous teachings,
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
wisdom that those cultures and traditions have developed over thousands and thousands of years
Yep.
for humanity, and this kind of prophecy of the eagle and the condor, and the unification of, instead of East and West, the northern and the southern hemispheres.
Huh, that's cool.
And I find that one very interesting. It feels like there is a new kind of spiritual tradition emerging from humanity. People trust the wisdom of nature and are developing a language in relationship with it through
Yep.
ingesting these medicines. And for me, it's not as much my path, but just being in nature like this, of
Yeah.
course, is part of that. And it's one of the reasons why I was drawn to Costa Rica. Is it's literally it feels like a bridge,
Yeah.
between North and
Yeah.
South America. And
Yeah.
so, that's part of my work here is how can I unify these different perspectives while respecting.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I think you're spot on here. And when we were young, when Prabhu Rinpoche was around, Carlos Castaneda's books were big,
Yeah,
and part of what I came away from, and Prabhu Rinpoche would talk about Carlos Castaneda, those books. Uh, but what I came away from was, at least at that time, and I still think it's true, that the white man becomes fascinated by the wisdom of the indigenous world and wants to approach it as it approaches everything else, like an acquisition.
sure, right.
And and it's it and because of that, not because of that, part of the dynamic there is much of the wisdom of the indigenous peoples, um, by definition, is kept secret, is kept hidden.
Right,
Not because it's trying to deceive, but it's like a moth landing on a tree.
right.
It's part of the world. It's so integrated into the world that it doesn't announce itself.
Yeah,
And I think part of the confusion that Westerners have is it should somehow get institutionalized, or we should do it, or something like that, rather than understand how to weave the phenomenal world into the fabric of who you are so that the actual teachings and nourishment become more apparent rather than sought after, if that makes any sense.
yeah,
And most Westerners are not used to that. We're just not used to being. I think in up here in the north, my instincts. I'm reading a book called Fool's Crow right now. Um, it's absolutely worth reading. It's not like Black Elk Speaks is,
yeah,
well, much better written and enjoyable. But either way, it doesn't matter. Both of these shamans, Black Elk and Fool's Crow, they both speak to the fact that the wisdom should not be made available.
yeah.
Like, hey, the moth is over here. It's on the tree here. Look at it. No, no.
Right,
If a white man, or not, I shouldn't say white, but I mean, a person of not of that indigenous culture wants to explore it,
yeah,
one must weave oneself into the fabric of reality,
yeah,
and then maybe you'll get to see it.
right,
But I think it's from a Shambhala point of view, in the tantric way that I've been trained, deep respect
yeah,
for the indigenous wisdom, for the kami, for the drala of your world,
yeah.
is fundamental to the way we conduct ourselves. So good luck, man.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. It's as you were speaking, the phrase come up to me. It's like the indigenous mind, which we all have access to, is very non-linear. It's not
Right.
IDR. It's a circular experience. And
Yeah.
it's only and it's something that emerges from aligning oneself with those natural cycles of life.
Yeah. That's well
And so
said.
I feel it here in the culture. It's very pura vida is almost like aloha, but it's also it's hello, goodbye, how are you? It's everything. It's just a recognition of that pure life. Life is life. Life is this basic goodness, and it either happens or it doesn't. And we make plans for doing things with our house or with the gardener, and it's always si Dios quiere, if God wants it, or con gracias a Dios, with the thanks of God, which of course has a theistic,
Yeah,
bent,
but I
but
get it.
yeah,
Yeah.
but relates to this sense of maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but you have the intention, and that's the way that you move through life, and it will either kind of drive you crazy, or you'll learn to adapt to it and enjoy the fruits, of its way of life. So, yeah, it's a tremendous practice, and thank you. Yeah, it's quite an incredible journey down here, and I feel blessed at this point in my life to begin working on it. So we'll see what kinds of crazy magic we'll be able to cook up out here. It will be pretty cool. Wonderful. Well, maybe this is a natural kind of closing point. What do you think? Any other final thoughts are coming up for you? Or?
Well, I just want to thank you for grabbing the mantle, of applied mindfulness training. And I think that your vision is a broader one, of exploring. And I wish you well, man, in your conversation with the world. How do we inspire the best in others? I think that's the Bodhisattva's vision right now. So if you ever need me or a wisdom seed or whatever, we're ready to jump in.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michael. I really appreciate the support and our collaboration. Let's see what ways that we might be able to keep an eye out for doing things together in the future.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
All right.